Today on the Daily Charge, the Huawei Mate X finally arrives. In China. Quantum supremacy. What's that? And 1 month in with the Nintendo Switch Lite. Is it still worth it?
Welcome to the Daily Charge. Today is Wednesday, October 23rd. I'm Roger Chang.
And I'm Scott Stein.
Here are today's top stories. The Nintendo Switch Lite has been out for about a month, and Scott's been living and breathing this console. Scott, what's it been like using the Lite? And are you able to forgive it for some of the trade-offs for the older or the larger, more complete Switch?
I'm having a hard time with that. And I just said in a video today, here it is, and I've been commuting with it. I really, really wanted to make the Switch Lite the main system, but Nintendo never really intended for that to be the case. And the problem is that, as I had thought would be the case, you have to switch to a new mindset with the other Switch. So now this is handheld only, and that's totally fine. And I really love the hardware if you're going to be using this just as a kind of sequel to the 3DS, playing its own games. But the whole idea of the Switch was to be versatile and flexible, and so you're losing the multiplayer. And I still miss that with my kids at home, connecting it to a TV. That's the multiplayer element, because you're not going to gather around a small screen.
Right. I mean, that functionality is why it's the Switch.
Right.
And when you lose that functionality, is it really a Switch?
No. And you're losing same room multiplayer, which was the whole cool thing. You play Smash Brothers, play Mario Kart. The second thing that's really annoying, and it really started to dig at me, is the whole way the Nintendo handles its shareable downloadable games or non-shareable downloadable games.
Right.
If you have a game card, if you have a whole bunch of game cards, you're fine. But if you happen to download from the eShop, which I do and a lot of people do, those get locked to one account. You can set up a second Switch that only plays them in an online state.
Huh.
So you have to authorize online to do that.
Right.
But then that second Switch cannot have any other player accounts on it.
Right, that's the
so you end up with this
and that's
weird.
The selling point for some of these cloud services like Apple Arcade, right? The idea that you have one account and you can share those games across multiple devices. That's something Nintendo hasn't been able to really get behind.
No, or they've done this kind of weird halfway step that's a bizarre Nintendoification of their shared games. That kills the idea of making this a second system for people who have the first system. You can do it, but you're going to have to be living by very particular weird rules. And even the sharing of cloud save games, which not all the games do, but most of them do, it doesn't automatically do. You have to go check back in the subfolder in settings and see if you have to make sure you re-download the last save from the previous one and resolve them. So it's frustrating. I love it for commuting.
Yeah. And frankly, for me, like the Switch, I almost only play the Switch on my commute at this point.
Then this could be for you. But if you had any plans to do games with kids or to do things like Ring Fit Adventure, the fitness game that just came out, or any of the weird things like Labo,
and
whatever else
that is a solitary experience with the original Switch. You can take the Joy-Cons out. You could have two players play at once, right?
Well, and also then you can repair, in a sense, or not repair, but you could swap out the controllers when they get worn down. You could buy new controllers and do that. Now you're stuck with everything that's on here. You can pair controllers on Bluetooth, but there's no kickstand. There's no you'd have to prop this up. There's no video out. And I think that Nintendo needs to stay true to the idea of what the Switch is. I think the one problem with this, it sure kind of makes sense, but if they drift too much, then I think you lose the appeal of the system for a lot of people.
Gotcha.
So they have to play this kind of carefully, and I think really what I want to see is an updated version of this that simply does video out. You'd solve everything with that and allow yourself to pair controllers.
Okay. Well, after months and months of teases and delays, Huawei finally released its Foldable Mate X phone, but only in China. The world's second largest phone maker stole Mobile World Congress back in February when he unveiled this phone as competitor to the Samsung Galaxy Fold. But like the Fold, it's been hit with a lot of delays. What do you think, Scott? Is this a phone that, it's definitely, it's like the opposite of the Fold. It folds outwards. The screen's on the outside.
Yeah.
Do you still care at this point?
I don't care about folding phones right now because they're too expensive and the software is not
It's
optimized.
only $2,400.
Right. Go for it.
Yeah.
You can see from people who have been reviewing it, and I didn't get a chance to spend time with the Galaxy Fold, so keep that in perspective. Maybe if I used it, I would fall in love with it, but I don't think so based on everyone's comments. I think that I would want to wait for the optimized software to come up with some really killer apps beyond just, oh, it's a bigger screen.
Right.
The cost is crazy, durability.
That's a big question, particularly this one. These are all,
pocketability.
by the way, all these foldable screens use plastic displays, which mean they're easily scratchable, which is why I think Samsung had it sort of folded inward. This is outside. It's completely exposed all the time. I had a chance to play with this a couple of times, and it's impressive. Don't get me wrong. Folding it in and out, it's super impressive. The big screen's nice. It's a full screen. But I do wonder about the durability of some of these things.
I'm kind of interested in, and then there's the Microsoft approach, or the the two devices with the hinge, which is another valid approach and might be more durable. I think there's certainly something going on there. I think it's interesting, sure, for the future, but if you're thinking about what you would buy, this is well ahead of the curve in terms of anything affordable or mainstreamed in terms of software. And then people buy phones, like, I feel like every 3 or 4 years. A lot of people, unless you're a ritual upgrader or first adopter. It's cool for Huawei, and I think they've been leading the pack like Samsung on a lot of bleeding edge tech. I think it's definitely something to watch, but it's stuff that I would not say is ready for people.
For sure.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, like, Huawei, obviously, the U.S., we kind of know them as this company that's controversially, tagged from the U.S. government as a security hazard. Yeah. That said, today they said that they shipped 200 million phones this year at a faster rate than they did a year ago. So it doesn't seem to be stopping them too much. Well,
I mean, Huawei, I think, has the past couple of years has come up with really bleeding edge phones and technology and has made a big mark with that. And so that still remains regardless of that. And I think that puts them as a force to be reckoned with in the electronic space, and already has. So yeah,
for sure.
That.
All right, lastly, forget regular old supercomputers. Google's released the results of its quantum computer, and it blows everything else away. Google says its machine performed the same number of computations in 200 seconds that the world's fastest supercomputer would take 10,000 years to match. On with us on Skype is Stephen Shanklin, who wrote up the story and is actually at a conference right now to discuss supercomputers. Shanklin, what's the significance of this announcement? Break it all down for us.
Okay, so what we've got right now is a computer industry that's slowing down. Clock speeds on regular chips are not getting fast the way they used to, and it's been really hard to demonstrate that this year's phone or this year's PC is a lot faster than last year's phone or last year's PC. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of work going on right now in the computing industry to find something else. One of those big something else's is quantum computers. They are radically different from classical computers. Classical computers are what runs in your smartwatch or your PC or your phone or conventional supercomputer. So this is a very interesting, basically a research milestone, but one that points the way toward potential commercial use of quantum computers.
And you bring up the term quantum supremacy. What is quantum supremacy? Because that sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster movie.
Yeah, it's a very catchy term. It sounds really exciting, but you have to be careful with it. All it means is that a quantum computer is not merely faster than a classical computer at something, but way, way, way faster. There's no way a classical computer could catch up. You're doing something with the quantum computer that you could only do with a quantum computer by virtue of its very different nature. Now, the reason you have to be careful is, although Google found something that its quantum computer can do faster, it can't do everything faster. It can't even do every quantum computing chore faster. So it's a narrow victory, but it's still an important one because the researchers believe that it paves the way toward extending quantum computing abilities so that it will be able to knock out more performance victories in the future and be able to do more types of work in the future, not just a science fair project like what we see today.
And so just break it down for us. Quantum computing, I know traditional computing uses like ones and zeros. Quantum computing uses like a weird state where it's both ones and zeros at the same time. And like, how does that make things go faster? How does that improve the computing horsepower?
Yeah, you have a very strange world with quantum computers. It takes advantage of the very strange, counterintuitive physics of things that happen at the atomic level. So instead of having a bit in a classical computer, which can store a 0 or a 1, in a quantum computer you have a qubit, which can store both a 0 and a 1 at the same time. And not only that, through another strange thing called entanglement, you can hook up these qubits so they're each connected. That means the state of each one can have bearing on the state of all the other.
Oh,
The quantum supremacy.
Time.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. Hang tight.
Wait.
All right. We're gonna segue to Q&A. Let's turn to the audience and get their takeaway. Are you more or less interested in investing in a Nintendo Switch Lite? Or
Or a quantum computer.
Or a quantum computer. Are you or anyone in China experienced the Mate X? How long do you think it reaches where you are? And can really any of us comprehend what quantum supremacy is besides Stephen Shanklin? Sound off in the comments or add us on Twitter. We'll try to tackle whatever you can throw at us. Brian, what do we got?
Actually, I think we got Steven back, so I'm gonna go ahead and segue
Awesome.
back over there.
Okay,
Steven,
cool.
are you
Well, if
there?
there are any, let's if there are any questions for the chat, I'd love for some of our audience to ping Shank with some
I
of the
like
questions.
this comment from our old friend Eric, who says, we're just in the times of sci-fi computing. Do we think that's actually the case? Have we really reached that level where we're truly like venturing into science fiction computing? I mean, how far away are we from Star Trek phasers?
Shank, what do you think? Are we
Shank steak.
This is a Shank
Okay,
question
so I've
for
got
sure.
a good answer for that. If you look at any computer today, if you look at the physics of how it works today on a smartphone or a smartwatch or a PC, we're already in the sci-fi era. The engineering is going on at the atomic scale already. Yes, this is a whole nother ballgame with quantum computing, but frankly, I mean, I talk to processor engineers a lot, and it's unbelievable what they have achieved already. So, I mean, personally, I find it astounding that even conventional computers work, much less quantum computers. Are we anywhere near a phaser? No. Come on, how can you get that kind of energy density in something this big? Forget it.
There you go. He actually gave a really
That was an awesome
practical,
answer.
thoughtful answer for the phaser question. I love it.
I was not ready for that.
I know.
All right, Yan, always coming through with really well thought out questions. Quantum computing is cool. Had Google responded to IBM's doubt that Google had achieved quantum supremacy, did Google fail to account for the supercomputer storage potential?
So yes, the short answer is Google did address IBM's criticism, which IBM published a couple days ago. So IBM questioned whether the Google researchers really had produced quantum supremacy. They said if you do the math in a different way and you store data on conventional hard drives, well, guess what? We can do that problem in a few days, not in 10,000 years. So it might be that IBM has a different way to crack this particular nut. But Google said, yeah, there might be some ways that you can improve things, but we're still on a track here for exponential improvement in quantum computers. So maybe it's today, maybe it's a year from now, but they seem very confident that they definitely have achieved quantum supremacy in this particular domain.
I love that the span goes from 2 days to 10,000 years.
Right?
There's a maybe like split the difference at 575 years or 2,800
5,000
years.
years?
Yeah, that's just an unbelievable. Like they said, 10,000 years. We can do it in 2.5.
2.5 days.
And they're like, yeah.
Since we're on the topic of Google, anyways,
It is such a crazy scale for to think about.
All right. Since we're on the topic of Google, anyways, Yan wants to know any update on the Google ban on Huawei.
Oh, great question. I believe that there's still, so technically, I think Huawei still has access to some Google services, but not the core ones like email and like Gmail or Google Play. There's sort of an extension on the entity list that it's on right now. But I think that deadline's coming up pretty soon. And right now, the phones that they're shipping don't have Google services, Gmail. Like they have access to Android, but not necessarily like Gmail. So same with the Mate X, just like the Mate 30 that just launched recently, no key Google services. So no real update right now. We're just sort of seeing whether or not some sort of deal gets brokered or if they actually like have to pull out and just be completely dependent on their own Harmony OS. So we'll see. It's still kind of a holding pattern right now.
Got it. Here's one from Ben the One. What will happen to the world if quantum computers are ready and maybe even available to normal people? I mean, would all of our passwords be rendered useless?
Ooh, Shank. That's a good one.
The quick answer is no. So first of all, these computers are extremely difficult to run. You have to refrigerate them down to is close to absolute zero, which is as cold as anything can possibly be, literally. So you're not going to be running these in your laptop or your phone. These have to run in very, very carefully controlled circumstances in data centers where it's jiggled around. At least for the foreseeable future, nobody's going to have a quantum computer under their desk. Now, the bigger question is, will they crack your encryption? And the answer there is yes, but no. So there is mathematical proof that quantum computers can crack today's encryption. But first of all, that will require several more years of development and probably several more quantum computing breakthroughs before that's practical. And at the same time, the US government and a lot of private sector companies are working on what are called post-quantum algorithms that will be impervious to those attacks. So hopefully by the time a quantum computer can crack today's encryption, there'll be something else in place that can't be cracked. So you probably don't need to worry about that one.
There you
Great answer, man.
Wow.
We got to have you on more often. We got a really dense, chewy topic here. It's nice to have a real expert in here,
Hey,
Roger.
hey, what? All right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's totally true.
Hey, I got to make up for lost
Stephen
time
Shankland
since
show.
we were offline the last couple of days.
Yeah,
Again,
for sure.
wanted to say thank you and sorry about that. We had a bit of a technical difficulty here. It's been solved as per usual, so we're back up and running. I don't know, this last couple months have been kind of cursed for us, but anyways, thanks to everyone for your patience and for coming back and joining us. We love to have you. We got a few minutes left, so let's tackle a few more questions. I think it's time to pivot over in Nintendo world. What do you think, Scott? Ryan wants to know. Actually, Ryan just
Yes.
wanted to send a comment to you. He says, I watched your video yesterday, Scott. Came out at the perfect time as my 10-year-old has been asking for a Switch Lite for Christmas. Scott's video changed my mind. That loss of multiplayer is a big hit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think that I think about this a lot because I think people don't want to keep spending money. And we talked about quantum computers and $2,400 phones. So a $200 to $300 system doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in terms of you don't want to have to spend. And the other thing to keep in mind is that who knows if the original Switch will also be on sale. Sometimes you could save $25 or more, get a bundle. And if you're talking about a $100 difference in price, then suddenly that price difference could evaporate all of a sudden on a surprise Black Friday thing. So thanks. I think you'll be happier with the original Switch.
I think I'm with you on that one, Scott. Considering I'm biased and exposed to you guys around it all the time, I don't think I would want the Switch Lite. Now, I could imagine that if somebody's just itching for a portable game to shut the kids up in the backseat of the car, yeah, the Switch Lite will fix that itch.
I mean, I would like it a lot more if there was a better game sharing mechanic
The
to
game
it.
sharing, yeah.
Like as a secondary or third Switch for your family, for your kids, but not having to pay double or triple the price for the same game.
Right.
That just doesn't make sense, right?
Well, then, at that price, $200 for each Switch Lite is not a crazy price when you consider what iPads cost or a lot of tablets. I mean, even Kindle tablets can go up to the $150 range.
Yeah.
So, sure, it's just games, but it's not a crazy thing. And I know, the second Switch in the house may sound crazy, but it's not. If you have a Switch and you have kids, you think about that. And if Nintendo just fixed that, that's what I was begging for in the video, just fix that game sharing thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem ridiculous. And I said this to Nintendo, of course, every company has its own reasons for doing what it's going to be doing. But just allow it for the family account.
yeah.
This is not a ridiculous request.
Right.
And you solve all the problems except for this doing video out. But again, this is a second Switch, it is a great handheld. I do want this now to be the form for where the Switch goes, which makes it really tough to go back to the original Switch because this feels nicer.
The screen is a little bit smaller. Are you able to forgive that little change?
Yeah, it's fine, except for there are some games where I'm kind of squinting. I've been playing a bit of a upcoming game that's coming out on October 31st that involves ghosts. That's like a little, that's an example. Some of those role-playing games, particularly if you're talking about Fire Emblem, which is really tiny text for me.
Right.
But it's tiny even on the larger Switch. You can magnify it, but I think it basically feels pretty equivalent is what I'm saying. I think it's fine. Except I kind of miss this doesn't have Rumble because some games actually use it as a mechanic.
Yes.
For some kind of notifications.
Isn't that kind of weird that that's become so ingrained in the Nintendo video gaming lexicon ever since Star Fox 64 introduced that mobile pack? Granted, there had been some haptic touch kind of things going on in video games before that, but nothing too revolutionary. The fact that Rumble Pack on the 64 kind of, that was, I think, an underappreciated revolution because it did suddenly make the game more immersive, and it had different tactile responses. It wasn't just like that. It had, degrees of response, and now we've come to just expect it. I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I used to totally write off the Rumble stuff, and now it's a very useful sixth sense, and I also feel that way in VR, too. Like, haptics is one of the most interesting things. Even on phones, it's probably underappreciated. So, and I think it's kind of like 3D on the 3DS, where like when you remove the 3D, you're like, okay, I was never using that. But some games actually kind of use that 3D in interesting ways. And then they had to design all games to basically not rely on 3D. Now Nintendo is going to have to ensure, and it kind of already is like that all the games don't rely on Rumble for any core mechanic because the Lite doesn't have it. So, like a couple of games, I feel like you'd be missing something. It's kind of like the way, I don't know, it's just weird. Nintendo does this, and it's like, I feel like they're painting themselves in a bit of a corner. So, we'll see. I miss the Rumble.
I do too. We have just a few minutes left, so let's try to tackle as many as we can in a short amount of time. Is there a way to transfer game saves from the regular Nintendo Switch to the Lite?
Yes, let me tell you how that works.
It's complicated, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've gone through this. You have a couple of options. One, as I began to rub my eye with exhaustion, one is actually Nintendo's made this a lot easier than they used to. So in some sense, thank you, because it used to be like you'd take a long time. You can transfer all of your information from one Switch to another. It doesn't transfer the full downloaded games, just the save data states. And it makes you feel a little nervous because you're like, I hope nothing screws up. But also, if you're a Switch online customer, most of the games have cloud save. But I noticed some like Splatoon 2 and a couple of others don't have the cloud save enabled. Like a small handful weirdly don't.
Yeah.
But most do. And what that means is that all that stuff's out there to be downloaded. If you transfer over your account, your user account stuff, it'll be over here. Then you re-download the games. On the other Switch, which then becomes the secondary, you can also re-download the games, but it only checks when they're online. And the game saves, so if you save on one game system, you go to the other game system, it should just be there, but you have to go into settings under data management, and it goes to cloud save, and it shows a list of all of your game states. Some still need to be uploaded. Some, there's fresher data that should be downloaded. So when you click on the game, you can choose which one you want, and it's pretty confusing because it's fine if you get used to it, but I started games where I was like, wait, I have to play all over again? Oh no, go into the settings and re-download the game save data. It all worked. So in that sense, cool. And you can check. But
my eyes
it's
are
a little
rolling.
like
Just
shuttling. Yeah, you're like shuttling back and forth. It just means that at least you could. I've been playing games between both systems, and you just make sure when you get to the other
also,
system,
you
download
do have
the game
you
save
have a
data.
unique problem that you have been juggling multiple systems. Most people
Yes.
aren't going to be doing that.
Most people
right?
aren't doing that.
Yeah.
But if you have kids and you like keep one parked at home so the kids can play, like this is how Dad's traveling. He's taking the one that can play on the plane.
Yeah.
You get the one that's at home. Guess what? You can't play that offline at your friend's house anymore. Tough. Also, my kid's second account that he plays Fortnite on. So Fortnite's fine because you could create a new free game and just use use a login. But another game like Splatoon, well, guess what? That's downloaded under my account. Oops, you can't play it now on the second Switch. So find Dad's Switch. Dad's traveling, and that's terrible. But or Nintendo's answer is get a game card, which is like the age-old Nintendo answer.
Right.
Buy a second card. It's better than it used to be, but it's so close to being fixable. I hope that answers your questions.
I hope so. That was a very comprehensive answer.
I'm so passionate about this.
Yeah.
It's totally livable and totally annoying at the same time.
There you go. That's life right there.
That's life.
Yeah.
But like, isn't it supposed to be like a fun Disney casual? Disney's not casual either. Disney is annoying at Disneyland.
Disney's very corporate.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to wait on lines. You have to go fast pass. And
Yeah.
you have to deal with reservations.
But you know what? You deal with it.
Yeah.
You just deal with it. It's not great, but you deal with it.
That's what I feel. I just feel like I can see the light ahead at the end of the tunnel for this. And it's like with Apple, with the iPad, it's like you just want them to get there.
Okay, we had to let Shank go because he had a presser to get to, but thank you again to Stephen Shanklin for joining us on the show. Before we let everyone go, since we're on the topic of the Switch, has anyone purchased Google Stadia Founder Edition? Are you disappointed about the Stadia controller as well as that Stadia can only play using Wi-Fi? Scott, you've had a little experience with this guy. Is this all true?
Now, I've not had any experience with the upcoming to be released hardware outside of a couple of brief demos, which Google's been pretty locked down on so far. So we've not tried this in the wild. But yeah, it sounds like the capabilities for what the controller can do are limited. The hardware that it works with, it's going to be limited.
Yeah.
The game launch selection is going to be limited. And even the cooler, wider scale things like what it could do with YouTube or what it could do with like the whole promise of like 1,000-player battle royale stuff, that's not going to be... I mean, it sounds like this is like a soft launch in 2019 with an unveiling of the other stuff probably in 2020.
I mean, they're also, I think, looking or waiting for the infrastructure to improve to actually handle the bandwidth for some of this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I
like
think
5G, Brian.
Right.
That's it. That
But
was
like
my
to
one
test,
5G plug.
to test like what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Get the technology off the ground and see. But to me, it feels like Project Stadia in the sense that this is something right now that will not be the ultimate solution, but it'll be really interesting to see how it plays.
And that is part of Google's MO, right? They tend to launch things in beta in general, right? Gmail was
projects.
Yeah, exactly. Gmail was in beta for years, right? So
the most interesting thing to me about Stadia is the larger scale stuff that isn't even about games. It's like the simultaneous telepresence and the possibilities for YouTube that go beyond games. I think this is a fascinating technology that kind of turns my brain inside out when I start thinking about it's almost like a virtual reality to this, like the instancing that can go on. And when you're starting to stream stuff that's not just a video, but is a experience that you can interact with, but might have different states. There's something weird and fascinating in that I think Google is dipping its toes into. But right now, yes, it's about games. But again, we've seen that. There have been streaming game services before.
Right.
And there will be more streaming game services going forward. And I don't even know how compatible Stadia will really be with all of those. Like, are you going to be stuck in Stadia land for your game purchases? Will you be able to cross over? We'll know more about that very soon.
Okay, before we let everyone go, Ryan says I haven't purchased a gaming console since the PS3 in 2009.
Wow.
Not a big gamer, just looking for something the kids would like. Would you say the Switch is the best option over the PS4 or Xbox?
Yes.
Yes. The Switch is my favorite game console, right? Like, for all my gripes, I think I said this at the top of the article today. It's my favorite game console right now, and it's not even close. For kids, I think that was the question, for kids. Yep. For kids, it is hands down. Unless you're going into the mobile environment, which has a lot of interesting games that kids play. But I just find that the PS4 and the Xbox, even in their presentation, go so far into games that are not kid appropriate. The way they advertise.
I mean, they're definitely, it's more for hardcore gamers.
Yes.
They're more expensive.
Everything on the dashboard.
They're not as mobile. They're not as portable. So, yeah, in general, like, I'm with you. The Switch, I mean, I'm a later adopter of the Switch. Like, I've had an Xbox One for a long time. That thing has been collecting dust since my first kid was born. The Switch, though, I can play on the train ride. I can
play Xbox more now, but their kids are older. Yeah.
Right. But like, for me right now, it's like if I can carve out a little time, I'm not turning on my computer, booting up my console. Turn on the Switch, it's on instantly. I can take it around with me. And the games are definitely more, I feel like they're more kid appropriate in general. Like,
yes.
They're not just kid appropriate, they're like universally appropriate games. Right?
They're great. And every time I think that they're going to run aground and kind of like just do a lot of like repetitive stuff, even that stuff that seems repetitive is such high quality.
Yeah.
They have a remarkable ability of just making, you see in reviews, like they sustain quality over time. So there's a lot of really good games, a lot of great indie games that are, instead of the $60 games, you can get a lot of $20 fantastic indie games that are now going to the Switch because it has a large base. So it fits in there and it's portable. So some of those games are like only playable in a portable state on the Switch. So I think it's great for kids and the multiplayer. So anyway, it's just that right now Nintendo made it really ornery when this should have been a slam dunk.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to recommend a Switch, I would still recommend the classic, or I guess the new upgraded, longer lasting Switch, but with the Joy-Cons, not the Lite.
With the Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun to play multiplayer, and some games that are out there, like the Mario Party, like Smash Brothers, some are really designed to be played in a group. The Jackbox Party Pack type things. Like, I mean, all that stuff you're going to not be able to do.
Yeah, I never thought I'd really get into the idea of bringing that sucker along to a bar and dropping that down, ripping the Joy-Cons off and playing with some strangers, but I've done it a couple times now, and you know what? It's solid. Like it's like bringing a board game around with you, but it's even more convenient. Okay, we're over time, but I wanted to address these really quick before we shut down. Timothy's asking if you think the Lite is the next DS, and before we get into that, wasn't there a little bit of a leaked rumor earlier this week, later last week, about a new Game Boy, like the end-all, be-all Game Boy coming along, or is that just troll-worthy that I got baited into?
Well, there was a company called Analog, which I wrote about, is making like their perfect retro player Game Boy. So I don't know if that was the one that you saw. Like
I heard rumors about Nintendo themselves unveiling a new Game Boy in the line. I'm gonna look for it.
Like a Game Boy Classic?
I keep waiting for them to make a Game Boy Classic because it's like 30th anniversary of Game Boy.
Yeah.
Make an original black and white Game Boy with 30 classic games on it, or 40.
Would it still run on the AA batteries?
Yeah, but it would be rechargeable.
Okay. All right.
Right? I mean, I don't know. Or AA for fun.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. The DS and the 3D... Oh, the DS. The 3DS, that whole thing feels like the end of the line. And I would see the Switch Lite as being the successor to that. I think a lot of longtime Nintendo players are gripey. Even when I called it the sequel to the 3DS, a couple of friends on Facebook were like, yeah, but it doesn't play 3DS games, so it's not a sequel, Scott. And I was like, I get it. I know. I love the 3DS, but I think that again, that's like end of the road. And this totally sets up as the successor to that. It's great for on-the-go games.
And it makes sense having one common platform for developers to actually work on.
Yes.
Like that you get the bigger breadth of games, right?
Well, 3DS was also, I'm amazed at the whole dual screen. From the very beginning, I'm amazed that succeeded because it was such a weird design.
Yeah.
Talk about folding things. Like, they made that work, but as a result, and this is part of the archiving history of the DS and 3DS, you have these dual screen things now that were stylus support. Like, you're not going to be able to have anything that really plays that in the same way going forward.
Right.
So they kind of had to start over. They had to make something new and say, like, unless they're totally committed to that forever, it's kind of like a goodbye to that phase. So, yes, I think that Nintendo sees the money here too, which is like they're doing well with the Switch, and it is portable. So that's the future.
All right, closing thoughts. Google is pursuing quantum supremacy currently, and IBM is focused on quantum advantage. Which, in your opinion, is more important?
I really wish Shank was still on.
Yeah, I know, right?
May I have no idea, but I would just like to take this opportunity to talk about some of the amazing phrases that I found in the Nature article.
Sorry, for the record, I could not find that article I was citing earlier. I think I might have dreamed it or just saw some BS on Reddit. But yeah, I saw a rumor that there was a new Game Boy coming.
Okay.
And if anybody can help me validate that, I'd appreciate it.
A powerful new tool, cross-entropy benchmarking. I just think they're
That's
amazing.
That sounds biological.
Yeah, I was
It
like,
doesn't even sound like a computer.
I didn't even get a chance to ask. I know we didn't answer that question because I have no idea about the answer to that question.
Yeah, sorry.
But
I mean,
who knows?
I think it's great that they're both putting effort into
The-
these supercomputers or these quantum computers, but
The answer is probably yes. That they both are pursuing.
that's a very quantum answer.
Right.
Both yes and no.
It's
at
a
the same
quantum
time.
state.
Yes.
There you go.
There you go.
I think that I didn't get a chance to ask Shank about this, but there's a fascinating thread in this in the Nature paper and about error correction and probability, and that even that phrase cross entropy benchmarking, that they were talking about getting to paving the way towards error correction. And I was thinking, my naive self thinking about computers is like, well, what errors? I thought computers are precise.
Perfect. Yeah.
But and I'm waiting for Shanklin to be listening and be like, Scott, no, let me explain what's going on. But like, I think that that's exactly it. That quantum is about some sort of like probability field. So again, I'm trying to understand this as well. But I think it's fascinating because I think the rules of the game and how it's talked about for computing are also changing.
Totally.
Try to dive into that piece and find how quickly it will repel you, because thankfully Shanklin broke it down in a much clearer way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
It's,
And if you are interested in more things about quantum computing,
Oh yeah.
Google's holding that conference down in Santa Barbara right now. Shanklin, you saw him in his hotel room. He's about to run off to this conference to learn more about all things quantum computing. So
He'll be writing more, and there's a lot more to
yes,
come.
definitely stay tuned to CNET for more on everything on quantum computer. Everything. I'm giving Shank a pretty high bar there to cross.
Shank will deliver all of your dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll make every dream come true for you.
There you go.
So just stay tuned.
But it'll be later because we're out of time. We're way over time. Again, thanks everybody for your patience recently. I feel like I'm saying it feels good to be back almost every show these days, but it's been a weird couple of months. Anyways, everything's good. See you tomorrow, Roger.
Yeah, it has been. It is fantastic to be back. It's a great show, everyone. Thanks as always to Scott for making time for us. Thanks to Shank, who's already offline, so he can't see this anyways. For you at home, we'd love if you subscribed and rang the bell so you could join us on the regular here weekday mornings. We really do enjoy catching up with you and learning what topics you want to discover more of. We'll see you tomorrow for the Daily Charge. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Scott Stein.
Thanks for joining us.
Can't get enough? Check out the Daily Supercharge, our extended post show with special features, audience Q&A, and in-depth reviews. Available now wherever you get your podcasts.